All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Secret Life of Therapists. I'm your host, Dr. Habiba Zaman. I have Dr. Stephen here with me, and he is the author of The Venus Flytrap. He is also a clinician, and we are going to talk today about the erotic self journey that he's been on.
All right. Fine. Okay.
Talk about life and love and sex and identity and what happens and the consequences of picking the wrong person to love. So welcome. Thank you again for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Me too. Well, thank you for having me, Habiba. I'm really excited about this because, we can relate. And I was relating to you telling the story. I think it was it Kaylin that you were on?
Yes.
Just saying, look, we have our own stuff, right? We're going through it. And sometimes, you've got to have, be there for the person, your client. And at the same time, your world he's falling down around you. You got to be able to keep it, you got to be able to focus on your client. And it's not always easy to do that.
Right. So tell me about your book. Tell me about, and this is not fiction, guys. This is not fiction whatsoever. This is definitely based on true stories. So let's go. What is it about?
Well, it's about a lot of things, right? So if you look at the book, you look at what's behind me, it looks like an erotic romance, which it is, obviously, right? But it's much deeper than that, and I learned this. It was not when I was going through it, but I've spent 3 years really delving into this whole thing and what happened. And I know you're going to be familiar with some of these things. I spent my whole life doing my stuff, not my whole life, but a lot of my life in the personal development and spiritual development arena, PhD in spiritual counseling, trying to, provide people with tools to get them through whatever they're going through. But as you're doing that, as I was doing that, I'm so focused on everybody else, but not on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not going through the things that I needed to go through, or avoiding them, should I say. Not that I never did anything. I was doing all kinds of events and, everything from primal scream to, whatever, right? But I was still not facing my shadow self, which can be a lot of things, right? The shadow self has the gold that you have to offer the world, and it has the shadow side that's holding you back, right? So this relationship was my dark night of the soul, getting me to finally face the fact that I hadn't been living my true self up to my potential. And I've been running away. I've been running away my whole life. I had a very traumatic childhood, as we all did, right? I'm not, we all can say that we had a traumatic childhood, right? And all I wanted to do when I was growing up was to run away from home.
Yeah.
Which I did 8 times, but they kept catching me and bringing me back. But eventually I got away from the physical home, but I kept running. And what I eventually realized is I wasn't running away from a physical home. I was running from my own home, which is me, and facing my demons, facing the things that I'd been through as a child that traumatized me, and facing my trauma, which it'll chase you wherever you go, right? So as I'm traveling all over the world, running away. But as you know, wherever you go, there you are, right? So
exactly. There is no hiding from your true self, is there?
There isn't.
As soon as you quiet down, as soon as there's some semblance of peace, there it is.
That's right. And I was going through my 4th divorce, right? So, which is, nobody gets married to get divorced, right? You always hope this is going to be. But
I'm also divorced, so trust me, that was not the first, I'm like, yay, love of my life. Except that it wasn't, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then sometimes people say to me, well, you married all these women. What was wrong with all these women? And I go, well, let's just do this. It's a matter of mathematics, right? So 4 marriages, and there was only one constant in all those marriages, right? It was me, right? So it was me.
And I love that you admit that. I do. And the reason I say that is I had this, it was a trap I set for my my partner, because we were talking about these things about what women want and what men want and intimacy and all these things. And I was talking about someone who's this brilliant, gorgeous, successful, right? Beautiful mother, everything. And this societal construct, right? The instinctive thing for most people to say is, well, what's wrong with her then?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Immediately, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of like, well, then what was wrong with her? And the reason I said it was a trap is because I said, so what's wrong with me? And then the kids are in the car,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's trapped in this car and they're like, no, this is going to go bad really fast, right? And it wasn't meant to start any kind of conflict. It's challenging that notion that something must be wrong. And typically the blame is put on the women instead of any kind of introspection of how both people play into whatever role and relationship you're in right now, whatever story that's being written in the moment, right? There's two characters there, and
Mhm.
that part's not focused on whatsoever. So I love that you said that. Thank you. The common denominator was you.
And the thing is, when you actually really go through that, and you realize there's only one place to look, and that is yourself, and that all these things that happen in this relationship forced me, finally, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, forced me to look at these things.
Okay.
So sometimes relationships are not meant to work long term. And it was an impossible relationship. It could never have worked long term. It was untenable. But one of the things sometimes we can slip into as a therapist, clinician, whatever you want to call it, is that we're so busy trying to help people. And you said it yourself. I remember I wrote this down, who am I when I stop trying to save everybody else? Right? It's almost like I don't want to say it's a compulsion, but we feel good when we're helping other people. But what that does is deflects from us, right? It deflects from us. And the
Sure.
skill sets that we learn can help other people, but they can trap us, right? Because we know how to get around all that stuff, right? We've got so many skills, we can continue to protect ourselves, right? So in this relationship, there was no way that I could protect myself. It was there right in front of me. And so many things that when we're hiding our true self, they're fragments of ourselves that we leave behind. So when we go through an experience like this, it makes them all apparent so you can heal them. But healing comes with pain. And most people are not prepared to go through that pain to discover who they really are and live a life of authenticity. Now, just to make things clear, I'm not there yet, right? But I'm a lot, I'm a
Yeah,
lot, I'm a lot,
right?
I'm a lot further along than I was before I started this relationship, right? I'm a lot,
Right.
I'm a lot more, I haven't healed all those things, but a lot more aware of them, right? And
Right.
I know the work I have to do. And of course, the work never ends anyway, right? It's a lifetime, right? So, but yeah, and I realized, in fact, my brother-in-law once said, he divorced from his sister and he went back to live in England. And he was talking to one of my nieces. And he said, and he's not a spiritual or a personal development at all, right? But he said to my niece, he said, how is Stephen doing? Is he still trying to save the world? Right? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Who does he think he is? You know what I mean? But he was right. He was so right. So now I don't want to save the world anymore.
It's exhausting. We can't. We're just not that powerful.
No, right? And then you say to yourself, wait a minute, God's got that, right? I think he's got that down. It doesn't really need you. However, there are people on the journey that sometimes need a little bit of guidance from someone who's been through some stuff. I didn't write the book to say I've got it all together, right? I wrote the book because I lived it. And
Exactly.
there are things that I learned that can help people not go through what I went through, or not waste years of your life,
Right.
not that it was a waste of time. And that brings up another thing is that, Tomaso's in the book is not meant to be saved. And sometimes we have to accept that that's her journey. She will never, ever change, right? It's just how she has decided to show up in this life. And she's doing incredible work. And she's an amazing soul that sacrificed so much to come into this life to even though she may not be consciously aware of it, to help men, right? To help them. And so I'm very grateful, eternally grateful to her for coming into my life. Even though people could look at it and say, well, she was crazy, and people say that, about women, right? Women's crazy, which to be honest, they are a little bit. But the point is,
Aren't we all?
yeah, of course.
Right?
I mentioned
yourself as your authentic self.
Yes, I talked about the spectrum of insanity. We're all on the
Right.
spectrum, you know. But
Thank
people
you.
say, well, maybe you can get back to normal. And we'll explain normal to me. Who's normal? We're all insane. We live in an insane world, right? But you got to
Right.
figure out where you are on the spectrum. We were way off, right? So we were way off the rails, right? But there was so many mirrors in it all. It was saying, here you are. She is you,
Yeah.
and you are her. So many things. Like when we were kids, we were both admitted to insane asylums when we were 16. So we definitely
What
were.
was the reason for that for you?
Sorry, what?
What was the reason you were admitted?
Because I was insane. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, right? So I, well, I was diagnosed. What happened to me? I had a case of mania, right?
Okay.
And so, which is, you just go as high as a cat, right? So and then I get admitted to a insane asylum because I'm feeling so good, which is kind of ironic, right? You're feeling so good, you love everybody, and you get into an asylum and they've got you in restraints, and I go, what do they got me? Well, they probably needed to be, but anyway. And then I go through ECT. Then I come out of the asylum, and I'm depressed for like 4 years because they brought me down so far, right? So what they said when they brought me down, they go, okay, now you're normal. I go, wait a minute, this is normal, right?
Right.
Later in my life, I questioned it because I said, it's interesting that I loved everything, everybody, peace with myself. And I said, well, maybe I didn't go insane. Maybe I went sane, but it just didn't fit into what society can accept today.
Right.
So I know that I had a spiritual awakening in that process, right? A lot of things happened during that process that convinced me now of that. But also, there is a I was diagnosed as manic depressive back then. This gives you some idea of how old I am. But it's now called bipolar, and there are all kinds of different bipolar, right? So it's very fragmented now. So I had those experiences. And when she was 16, she got admitted to an insane asylum. A father put her in an insane asylum, and that had long-term traumatic effects for her. So first of all, imagine your father putting you in there, right? And she couldn't get out. So she was trapped. And other things that happened to her. Her father's very wealthy, and he focused on business and money. He's very analytical, right? He's a genius. What he can do is amazing. But he was very emotionally stunted. So for her, he couldn't love her the way she needed to be loved. And she thought that she had to compete with him and be financially successful before he could love her.
You earned that love. Yeah.
And so she actually decided to hate her father. So you can imagine what that did to her male relationships from there. She hated men, right? But she was very intelligent, very smart. And so she set about competing with men, meeting wealthy men and taking everything from them.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know
that almost on a psychodynamic level, right?
Right. Yeah, I didn't know, right? So I met her, and within a couple of weeks, she's already tried to steal my house, get me arrested, get a restraining order against me, and live in my house and take everything, which she'd been doing for 20 years. So I wasn't the first one by any stretch of the imagination.
So what was she looking for? Safety? Proof that she didn't need that? She didn't need them?
When she was trying to prove herself to her father that she could get all this money and then use it to do whatever she wanted to do. But also the mental illness had taken. I didn't know what it was until much later on. You will know what it is. But I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's going to read the book, because it doesn't come out until book 2, right? There's all the symptoms and you can see it all happening. Total chaos, right? Total. I mean, just like we would go through in a month what people would go through in 10 years. And when you've got into the book and you're like halfway through the book, you're going, wow, they must have been together a long time already. And it had been like 6 months. So that's how intense it was. So,
and where were you in your life at this point?
Well, I was living in a mansion, right? I was making millions of dollars a year. But I was not enjoying it, right? Running around, flying everywhere, and doing these different speaking events, which I loved to do. I really did. But eventually I burned out. I burned out. And of course, that's not good for marriage, right? So I go through my 4th divorce. And I realized I'm just burned out. I'm not excited about what I'm doing anymore. And this had happened to me many times in my life because I've just kept running, 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 running. Eventually, you run out of gas, right? You get
What are you running from?
myself. Like I said, from a kid, I was running away from my own trauma for what had happened to me as a child. I never wanted to look at it. I never looked back on, being in a mental hospital.
Mhm.
When I was a kid in school, I got humiliated for reasons that are in the book. And I just kept going, and I'm sure you'd probably do this, right? We're all taught to, journal, right? So I did. I got a mountain of journals, but you know what I never did? I never read any of them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I was doing something because I was supposed to,
Right.
not for my own benefit. So I had to stop. And so after this relationship, I was finally able to let go, and then really learn the lessons. And I had to be on my own. So I decided I'm not going to be in a relationship, which was big for me because most of my life had been in some kind of a relationship. And so I said, okay, enough. I'm never going to change it unless I really work on me. And so I spent 3 years single, no dating, no websites or anything, and wrote the book. And as I'm writing the book, I'm going through the experience again from a different perspective now,
Mhm.
and really absorbing all the opportunities and lessons. So now I love being on my own. I love my own company, right? I love that I'm single. I'm happily single, right? Not that I won't ever be in a relationship again, but right now I'm just happy being on my own. I'm not, not in a relationship is what I mean.
Right.
And
But
so,
that's what we teach though, right? It's if you don't know how to enjoy being with your own thoughts, with your own experiences, with what you get to see and experience in life, right? Showing up with a sense of wonder is very important to me.
yeah,
That is how I deal with my depressive episodes. It's just making sure that there's a sense of wonder in everything, in every conversation, in every experience. I try to show up mindfully with, let's experience it with wonder, because otherwise you get trapped in that, well, what's the point?
yeah,
And I tell you, I don't know if you see this on social media, but it irritates me so much when people are like, you don't have to be healed before you get into a relationship because the relationship will show you what needs to be worked on. Yes, and very much no, right? You need to be
yeah,
content with your own existence so that everyone else, every other experience, every other relationship is the cherry on top. And then without it, you're still okay. You're still good. Life is still worthwhile without that added person. And then, if you're not, and if you haven't healed, especially deep rooted childhood wounds, you will 100% bleed all over people that didn't cut you.
yeah.
And that's just, I think it's so important to know the difference between making sure you're healed. And how do you know you're healed? You're healed because you can sit with yourself when it's quiet. You
Yeah,
don't constantly need the
yeah.
shebang everywhere.
So people would ask me, have asked me many times, "Are you healed?" And I would say, "Well, I really don't know yet." Right? I
Right.
won't know until I'm put back in that situation again. And will I get
Right.
pulled in? Will I be pulled in? Right? So the good news is that she showed up in my life again. Actually, it was just pretty recently, right? Isn't that
Okay.
ironic? Isn't that ironic, right? But I didn't bite. I wasn't interested. It's
Yeah.
like I'm not that person anymore. Know that they say
Right.
never step into the same river twice, you know?
Right.
I'm not that person anymore. So I went through sort of reinventing yourself or rebirth, right? It
Yeah.
was like giving birth again. And
Right.
the old me is dead. It's not there anymore. I'm just not that person anymore. So that was a big thing. And then, I do believe that relationships are our greatest teachers. And even if you're not fully healed and you get in a relationship, the relationship's going to teach you, right? It's going to teach you because the person that you are with is going to be a reflection of you.
Always.
They're going to reflect you back. Now, people don't always see that. I didn't see it for a long time. I thought it was them, right? But yeah, if you look at and one of the things that I've decided to believe, there's so many things I want to say, so I'm kind of all over the place, right? Because I love this
Do
subject,
it. That's fine.
right? So one of the beliefs I decided to adopt a long time ago, and I think it sounds like just listening to you that you have too, that nothing happens to you, but everything happens for you. Easy to say, different belief to live, right? Because
Right.
the good and the bad, right? This is the good and the easy to say that when everything's going great, but when things seem to be happening to you, tragedy, difficulty, really tough times, it's hard to say that. So I've been through enough of them, hopefully enough, to be able to say that I have done that. Now, doesn't mean, I don't get frustrated. Doesn't mean I don't get angry. I get all those emotions, right? But
You're human.
I'm human, right? Yeah, it shows you in the book, right? So anyway, but the time between me getting frustrated and getting upset and getting back into balance or whatever you want to call it is shorter and shorter because I have that belief. Because finally I go, okay, it happened for me. How did it happen for me then? Where's the silver lining? Where's the growth? Where's the learning? And once you commit to that, you always find it. It's always there. I give you an example from the book, which is kind of funny. So we were in this very volatile relationship, very toxic. We break up all the time, right? So and she would act out, right? And I would act out in different ways. But this particular occasion, she knows I'm really into clothes. I come from England, I'm into fashion and all that kind of thing. And so I spent a small fortune on my wardrobe, right? And of course, she knows this, right? So she comes home and she's pissed off with me. And so she goes into my wardrobe and cuts up all my clothes, everything, right? So I come home, she's gone, right? Because she knows I'm going to be mad, right? And I was like, well, first of all, this is funny. I come into the house and she's gone, right? And so I go, I thought I just have a cup of tea, right? So I go in the kitchen and I put the kettle on, right? Nothing's happening. Hit it again. Nothing's happening. I look behind the back of the kettle. She's cut the cord. She cut the cord. Every electrical appliance in the house, the TVs, everything, right? So nothing worked because she cut the cord, right? So then I'm thinking, oh shit, right? So then I think next thing is I go to my closet, right? I go, God,
You knew that was next.
God, please, right? So I go in there and you couldn't see a thing, right? I mean, you couldn't see a thing, right? It just like, I went, oh, thank God, right? And then I started looking and she'd like cut the lapel or she'd cut the back out. It was all destroyed. And shoes, she'd cut the corner of the shoes, right? So you couldn't wear the shoes. So, but here's the point I wanted to make. Not right away, as I said, not right away. It took me about a day. And finally I just went, well, I can't change it. It's happened. It's only clothes. You can replace clothes, right? And I said, well, what's it teaching me? Attachment. It's just clothes. Let it go. They're not that important. You've made them that important because now you are attached to them. So you got to let go. And that was the beginning of me letting go of everything. The house, the mansion, the sex room, the cars, everything, right? I just let it all go. And I just reinvented myself, right? From the ground up, letting go of materialism, letting go of my wanting to control everything. I mean, she taught me how to let go of everything. And one of the things that I admired about her, amongst many, is that she was authentic. She was who she really is, and she never made excuses for it. I remember us having a conversation and saying in essence, "Yeah, I'm crazy. That's me. But that's one of the things you love about me. You know what I mean? And this is what you get. Is this what you want?" And I go, yeah, right now it is, right? Yeah. So I made conscious decisions. I knew, and it says it in the book, many, many times I say, I know this can't work long time. I'm just going to enjoy her for the time that we're together. And I did, and we had a great time. Yes, there was craziness. Yeah, there was things that, and I say this at the beginning of the book, I say, this is what you're going to say sooner rather than later in this book. You're going to say, there's no way that happened. That can't be true. Nobody could be that crazy. I say, well, it is. It was. And we were, right? All those things happened, but there were so many amazing moments. Just like we were extreme one way, we would love bomb each other every day and do really nice things for each other. and spend amazing romantic times together. And, one of the things I learned is that I'm not, I say this to people now, you're going to get married again. And I say, listen, I'm unmarriageable, right? It's made up the word. No,
I
no,
mean,
I can't be married. I just can't. I can't do it. And I finally admitted that to myself. I kept trying. I mean, I was pretty committed to the idea, but it just wouldn't work.
4 times you did. You believed in it.
I did.
You wanted it. You hoped for it.
And it's not that I don't believe in it now. I just don't believe in it for me, right? So I think
Right.
it's
What
great.
does that mean? That's what I'm asking. What does that mean?
Well, for me, one of my I don't know if you know anything about astrology, but my birth sign is Aquarian, and one of the biggest values for us outside of friendship is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I start to feel confined, and one of the things that I've always, my parents were married for 64 years, which is amazing because they hated each other. But my point is, I'm not about longevity. I'm about being happy, right?
Right.
And what I've found in many relationships, and you can probably vouch for this as well, that many people, when they get married, they stop trying.
Yes, I did a whole podcast on that.
Yeah. And they start taking each other for granted.
Yes.
And they start diminishing each other, and they don't realize that even if you're saying it to somebody else, that's still a vibration. That's still energy coming off you, which your spouse is going to feel, and so I don't want any part of that. I'd rather be in a relationship where, they live here, I live there. We go dating, we go on adventures together, and then you don't get that, So that might be, I don't know, maybe it's not. Some people say, well, that's immature. I go, okay, well, I'm immature then. But that's what I feel like is going to be best for me. I'm not saying it's best for anybody else. It's just for me, what'll work for me. I don't want to live with anybody.
Right.
I value my own freedom now and doing what I want to do. And I also value, this is kind of funny, my experience of being married, this may sound chauvinistic, I don't know. But when I get into bed, I get the corner of the bed. They have the whole freaking bed. They stretch out and do their own thing. So I'm sleeping in the corner. I've got a king size bed and I'm sleeping in the corner. I don't want to do that anymore. So now I'm used to being able to stretch out of my own bed, and I love that, which sounds funny and it's an exaggeration, but I do like being on my own. I enjoy that now. And I never thought I'd be able to say that, Habiba. I never thought I'd be able to say that.
And I think I also have very unconventional thoughts on marriage and relationships. I don't believe that there's one person for all of your lifespan. It would be great if you did find someone that grew with you, and you guys fulfilled each other in those ways. And the amount of work that's required that you would hope that both people would do at the same time, that would be wonderful. I just don't know if that's realistic. Yeah. Right. The amount of reinvention that a human being goes through, this adult development, right? Development doesn't stop when you turn 18. It continues on. The last one starts at 65 that we know of, neurologically speaking, all of the above. And it would be wonderful if somebody could go through all of that with you in that capacity. And I don't know if it does. And I don't think society allows for recognizing we were great together at one point. Mm-hmm. I think I might have outgrown you, or you might have outgrown me, and that's okay. Let's grieve it. Let's celebrate what was great, and then let's move on. I don't think society allows us to do that for various reasons, right? Cultural reasons, religious reasons, whatever it may be. But I think it makes sense. There's so many people that are happy in marriages that I work with where we've let it be okay that they sleep in separate bedrooms. Yeah. One person snores. Why should the other person have to sacrifice sleep quality because that person snores, right? It doesn't even have to be spreading out on the bed, just the snoring, the loudness, or someone wakes up at 3:30 a.m. The other one doesn't have to be up until 7:30. Why would we sacrifice quality of life and health for that, just to say we sleep in the same bed? Yeah. Something so trivial as that. Right. And then it's completely different. I
remember hearing about that. And I saw it. I went to a beautiful home, beautiful place. They were very wealthy, but she had one side of the house and he had the other. And I'm like, why would you want to be married like that? But actually it makes sense, right? It makes total sense. Yeah, I agree with that. I really do. But sometimes without realizing it, we're limited by our, how we were raised and what we were told to believe about that, and a man and a woman, all those kind of things. But now, no, I think I think everybody's different, right? Like,
Mhm.
is there a marriage where people have been married since they were young and have grown together? Probably, right? Probably. There might be one or two out there, but that's not what's usual, right? And,
Right.
even at the end of this relationship, and you said a really important word there, you break up and you got to grieve it. It is the loss. It is a loss, right? And we had amazing times, but that is over now. And we both have grown since, well, both been apart, had such different lives that we're not the same people. And to even consider getting back together, which would be total insanity anyway, but to think about it, and I've done that. When I was young, I fell in love with this girl, and about 2 or 3 years later, we got back together, and it just wasn't the same anymore.
Hmm.
There. So I made a commitment since then that you can't go back. You know, you gotta move forward. Doesn't mean you can't care about that person or even know them, but that's my belief, and so that's what's right for me. I have heard of people going back and getting married 3 or 4 times, right? Um, or getting married again and it being fine. I mean, it's all
Right.
different, right? It's so different, and you see that because when you're dealing with people, what you would say to one couple, person, whatever, would be different than what you would say to somebody else because they're in a totally different place, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, all of these transitions, and I know there was a lot of childhood trauma, and it usually is, because we don't know what to do with it. We have these experiences that don't make sense, and that's our normal, but then it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. There's no escape from it. And no matter what that is, the way I define trauma is it's like the if you go to the beach and where the sand is, right, the wet sand, you smack your hand on it and it leaves an imprint.
Mhm.
That imprint is what's trauma. It doesn't matter what caused it.
Yeah.
Right. For some people, it requires something significant, life altering and damaging and horrendous. And for some, it's lifelong childhood neglect is just as traumatic.
Yeah.
And, people assume that trauma is one of the populations I work with is human trafficking survivors.
Mm.
Yeah, they're like, so yes, you deal with trauma.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
yes and no. Obviously, that's traumatic, and let's not minimize the same psychological, neurological impact that something like childhood trauma does as well, which
Yeah.
is just neglect, right? And they're like, but that's just neglect. It wasn't physically damaging. Well, the internal scars are a lot harder to heal from because you can't make sense of it.
That's right. And you're a child. You have no power. And the person that's usually doing that has the power over you. And so sometimes I do timeline therapy, right? Take them back to that point as an adult, and they're strong and they're powerful. They can do.
Yes.
One of the biggest challenges, I said to you before about that belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. But you've got to be very careful how you explain that to someone that was abused.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, it's not that easy, right? So you got to go through layers of layers to get them to the point where they can get past it, right? Accept that it happened, and in some way, shape, or form, see the silver lining that something came out of it. Maybe it could be that they now share their experience with others so they don't have to. All right. Or then they can get over it or through it, whatever it is, right? So that's interesting work. But it's gratifying if you can help someone. I mean, I can't do it for them, you know that, right? Nobody
Right.
can do it for anybody, but we can help them by giving them tools, right? And helping to change their perspective if possible. Yeah. So I'm just saying that it's not necessarily going to be easy to accept the belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. And for some people, it's very traumatic to try and go through that process. So if for those people out there, and I'm sure a lot of the people that listen are women, and some of them have been through those things, I don't mean to minimize those things either, right?
Right. No, absolutely. I think it is, and I'm going to give you a moment to explain further because a lot of people would challenge that and have a hard time receiving that, especially if you look at the wars that's going on right now. You
Mhm.
know, trying to tell someone that those children who that's all they know from birth until maybe death, that
Yeah,
that is happening for them,
yeah.
that will be very triggering for some people.
Well, yeah. So then you got to really get into some deep spiritual work to get that, to get them to see that they've chosen that life. You can't start out with a conversation. Well, listen, you chose this, so what's the problem, right? Or this happened for you. They go click, right? You're not gonna, this guy's insane.
Right.
So it's a process of getting people to that point, as it was a process for me to get to that point, right? So I think, from listening to you, as I have, you're the reason that these things happen for us is so we can help other people, right? The fact that you go through these things, you live a real life, can help you relate to people who are also having a real life, right? If you hadn't, if your life had been perfect, then how are you going to help anybody, right? You can't.
Mhm.
Experience that makes us the most powerful, right? You can have all the tools and the skills and all those things, but really, I believe and I feel that what really empowers us to help other people is our own experiences, and which is why when I say I'm very grateful that this experience happened for me, because I'm able to help people on a much deeper level, have compassion, understanding, because I went through it, not because I read it in a book, right?
Right. Well, it's like Frankel, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, amazing book. Yeah, one of the first
I
one of the first kind of personal development books I read, right?
uh,
When I was working with Tony Robbins, and he used to rave about I got to get that book, and it is an amazing book, incredible story.
yes.
I love it.
So with that, and that's what it is. It's your search for meaning behind what's happened.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I try to make it known that I don't think I'm a stronger person, and I don't think people are stronger because of the trauma that they've endured, because it doesn't make everybody stronger. Sometimes it does break them. However, there's always things that we can learn from it. And I think that's what you're trying to say is, where is the silver lining that I could take from this experience? Where is the growth that I've experienced? What is the challenge that I've experienced? What is the complicated grief or childhood, relational attachment style type things, that why am I continuously picking these types of people? Where's the pattern? Where did the pattern come from? Why the fuck am I here again?
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it perfectly. People don't have a relationship problems; they have pattern problems. They're repeating
Yeah.
these patterns over and over again. So we have to break those patterns, yeah, or help them break those patterns, right? So what were you talking about just before that? Because I had something I wanted to say about it. It was really powerful. What you said was powerful. Right before you were talking about, being broken, right? Or, being open to being fixed. So one of the things about adopting the belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you, is that it forces you to have to find it. You have to find
Mhm.
that, right?
Mhm.
You can't just say, well, I was making a joke with someone a couple of weeks ago. Something happened, and I called them up and I said, hey, that belief about nothing happens to you, everything happens for you? They said, yeah. I said, it's complete bullshit. And they just laughed like that, right? I said, okay, I'm kidding, but I'm struggling to find it right now. Just letting you know, right? I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'll get there, but I'm not there yet. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it. You know,
Yes.
it's
It
worth
is very
it because
challenging to
what it's
live what you preach.
stopping becoming a Bieber is it stops you becoming a victim.
Mhm.
You can't be a victim anymore. If you really take that on and you really live it, you can't be a victim anymore. And that's so difficult for people. It was difficult for me to believe, right? Things used to happen to me all the time. That's what I would tell people. She did this. Can you believe it? Or he did that, or whatever. And you're kind of exacerbated by it. But then, when you adopt the belief, and you can even go back through your life, and you can go, oh my God, I thought that happened to me. But now, when I really think about it in a different way, I can see how that happened for me. Because from that
Mhm.
experience, it took me one step higher on the ladder to where I want to be. Had it not happened, I wouldn't have had that experience. So rather than focusing on that person and being upset and being angry with them, or hating them or whatever, it stops you from doing that, because you say, okay, in some way I don't know if did you ever read any books by Neil Donald Walsh?
Mm-mm.
You should. He's a really good author. Anyway, he talks about how when we come down into this existence, we make a choice of some of the things we want to experience. But to do that, someone has to do something to us. If we want to, let's say you want to come here and you want to experience forgiveness. Well, someone's got to do something to you, right? For you to forgive for. So the little soul says, I will come into your life and do something for you to forgive me. I will smite you. And the little soul says, you will? Why would you do that? You, this perfect point of light, would have to lower your vibration and come into my life to do that for me? Why would you do that? And the other little soul says, because I love you. So when you think about these people that do something that hurts you, upsets you, and you think about, wow, that's a soul that's fully enlightened, that chose to come into this life to do something for me to wake up to who I really am. It's a different perspective. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds really good and it's helpful, right? And that's what's really what's
working for you.
Yeah, right. It works for me. Right? It sounds like, usually people say, yeah, when they say, I've done this and I've done that and then and you go, how's that working for you?
Yes.
And then they go, yeah, it isn't. Okay.
It seems like you've had that even within your own philosophy multiple times where this is what I believe, this is what I'm practicing, this is working. And then, like you said to the other person, this is bullshit. This is not working for me right now. I am not able to find it right now. What the fuck? What is this?
Right.
And it's important to show that, that's why I love doing this. This is fun for me.
Yeah.
This project that I have with the Secret Life of Therapists is to show that none of this is linear, right? We don't just learn this, practice this, and then watch everything just go like this, and it's fantastic. Yeah. I feel each transition that I've experienced as a woman, and as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a sister, you name it, right? As a therapist, as a writer, and my books are very similar to the one you wrote. It's based on, it might be a little bit more self-help than storytelling. I don't think I can do storytelling whatsoever, but about why we are at this moment and how we got here, right? Yeah. And it's not linear.
No,
it's not linear. And I don't know a single person who doesn't struggle with any part of the DSM.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's too
whether
thick.
It's adjustment disorder, whether it's anxiety, this, that, the other, we all go through all of this in varying degrees, right? Yeah. But I don't know anyone who's normal.
No, me either. And I don't think I want to meet him.
Wouldn't that be so boring?
Exactly. I was reading a book by Joseph Campbell. This is going back a ways. And it's called Myths to Live By. Anyway, when I'm buying a book, I always look through it, see if there's something that's going to inspire me. And I'll never forget, I'm reading in that book, and he says, it's not the perfection we love in other people. It's the imperfection. If someone was perfect, who want to hang out with someone who's perfect? And he said what you said. How boring would that be, right? So it is the difference. It's the imperfection that draws us to each other and repels us sometimes, right? Because it can drive us crazy on the other side of it, right? But that's what makes a relationship. That's what life is. It's the dichotomy of different things, right? It's the joy, it's the sadness, but we want to experience all of it.
Right. One of the things that I believe in as far as shadow workers and our shadow selves is we're not looking for anyone perfect. I'm certainly not. We all know this. Everyone in my life, anyone who listens to this knows that I'm not.
Yeah.
And we're just looking for someone where our shadows can dance with each other. They dance well together.
Yeah, well, there's a chapter in the book that's called "We're all looking for someone whose demons play well with ours."
Exactly.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not easy to find, but it is findable. But to do
part of understanding. It requires understanding and awareness. If you don't have that, that's when it becomes dysfunctional and toxic and you hurt other people. That's where you need to have some semblance of healing or interest in healing before you go searching for these relationships, because that's what we're doing, right? We're replaying all of these childhood models through every relationship that we have. And if you're not aware of it, then you just go on destroying everyone in your path.
Yeah, because you try and make them into what you want them to be.
Right.
And control them. You know, I don't know. Do you ever see that movie, Bruce Almighty? It's going back a ways.
Yes.
Right. And he's in love with, I think it's Jennifer Aniston, whatever.
Yes.
And, you know, he gets all these powers that he can, you know, make water step, you know, parting of the water and all these different things. But what he can't do is control a human. And
right.
He can't make someone love him. And he's standing there when he goes to see her at the school and he's going, he's trying to make
right. Right. He goes, love me, love me.
It's brilliant because it's so true. You know,
yes.
You know, if you're in a relationship, and it's not easy to do, but you just got to accept the person for who they are. You know, warts and all, you know, because like you said, they're not going to be perfect, right. But they are perfect in a roundabout way because they're the perfect person for you to be with at that time. To show you your judgment.
The perfect version of who they are at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Acceptance is huge in healing. And there might be a different version I'm working towards. There's growth that I'm wanting to have, but in this moment, this is the best that I could be right now. This is the perfect version of me with all of, like you said, the warts and everything else. This is the best version of me that I can present. Otherwise, I'd pick something better if it was possible, and it's not right now. So let's just be satisfied and grateful for where we are in the moment while we're working towards who we're becoming.
Yeah. It's difficult and challenging because society doesn't say that to us.
I know.
You know, it's such a different message. And, you know, we're part of us as a result of our environment. So we've got to be careful. You know, spending time on Facebook all day is probably not going to work out well, right? Because it's going to split you. We live in a society that wants to break us apart, that wants to divide us and not unite us. And so if we get too far into that stuff, we're going to say, you know, typical thing right now, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. And I go, no, you're not. You're not any of those things. You might be more aligned with those beliefs, but who you are is not a Democrat. And who you are is not a Republican. And when those people are sharing their views, that's not who they are. You can't vilify someone by saying, and of course, the parties both do this, right? They vilify the other side. Everything is their fault. Everything is their fault. And if you don't get out of that environment, you're going to feel the same way. And that's going to destroy your life and destroy your happiness at the very least. Yeah. And then we do that in relationships, right? You say men are, women are, and you clump it all together and we generalize and, you know, but have you ever met a woman that's not like that? And they go, well, yeah, right. Exactly. So it's not all women then, is it? Right. Or all men, right? It's that particular person at that particular time. We go through, I think we do go through general trends in our relation, in our lives. Right. So, well, for example, I mean, this is probably a little bit extreme, but, you know, we have lived for a long time in a very male dominated society, right? A matriarchal society, sorry, a patriarchal society. Mm-hmm. And it's moving towards a more matriarchal society. That's never an easy shift. That's a big paradigm shift. But when that paradigm shift happens, it's not going to happen perfectly. It's like the pendulum is swinging. Well, it ain't going to stop at the middle, right? It's going to swing probably too far the other way, and so on and so on. So, you know, recognizing that and appreciating the difference in ourselves. You know, there's what we call the 6 human needs, right? First is certainty. We've got to be certain about certain things, otherwise we can't even leave the house. But we also need variety. We also need change. We also need adventure, right? And so we need both. And so when people very often want everything to stay the same, it's going to be miserable because the only constant in the universe is change, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, you know, I hear people saying, and you see this, right? You know, we're going through this sexual revolution right now. which means, sometimes people don't even know what sex they are, right? Anyway, but my point is, it's what's happening. You can't change it. This is what is going on. We're going to become more androgynous. We've known that for decades, right? So when people say, well, I can't understand these people and they, gay people, lesbian, all that, I say, listen, it's been there. It's always been there.
Right.
It's just more apparent now.
Right.
And so it's causing us to look at those things and let go of our judgment on it. Right. And the more you judge it, the more you're going to see around you, So, yeah, being okay with yourself, that's where it starts. You're exactly right. You got to do the work yourself first.
Well, it seems like you've done all the work. I'm obviously excited to read your book and see what all these steps were and all the challenges were. Thank you for sharing a little bit of it with us, being so open and honest with it, of your viewpoint, of your stance, of your experiences. That kind of vulnerability I crave that kind of vulnerability.
Yeah, but I didn't for a long time, Abiba. It took this experience to just say, let it go. And that's why I'm so blessed by it and by her, is that she helped me be who I am, and to let go of all the fear of all the things that I thought people wouldn't love me anymore for, want to be in a relationship with me for, because I was ashamed. I had guilt and I never wanted to bring those up, like being in an asylum, right? It seemed that when you speak it, you go, oh, okay, not a big deal, right?
Right.
But in my life, it was like, that's a huge deal, right?
And I think it is because we've spent so long, what is that saying? Don't air your dirty laundry, right? As we're supposed to walk around with the perfect versions of ourselves as if it exists, which of course it doesn't. No. Instead of, when you come with this vulnerability, this authenticity, then other people, like when you said that, I was like, yeah. Right. And that was it. That was my reaction. Yeah. Instead of, oh my goodness, what you did? That a lot of people will not meet you with that judgment. And as long as they can relate to that. And I think it's so important to break down these barriers of who we're supposed to be, right? I call it stop shooting all over yourself.
Yeah. We coulda, shoulda, coulda. Yeah. Stop shooting over yourself. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, it gives you a freedom that you can't get anywhere else. And right. People, what do you think you really want in life? And they go, freedom. Well, you got to give it to yourself. Let go of what you think is shameful. Let go of what you think is wrong. Let go of judgment on yourself, because you're not gonna be able to not judge other people until you let judgment of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wrote a poem. I should send it to you. It's kind of like a lot of verses about all the things I've done in my life, right? Which is kind of crazy. And at the end, we think we've got to forgive other people, and we really don't. It's ourselves we've got to forgive. Once you've got through forgiving everybody else, you go, well, really, there's nothing to forgive about that. I've got to forgive myself. And if I can't forgive myself, how am I going to forgive anybody else?
And does your book teach you how?
Beg your pardon?
Does your book teach how to forgive yourself?
No, but if they want to get some help, they can come and talk to me, and I can help them get through.
I think that's the important part.
Sorry, what?
But that's the important part. I wanted to highlight. I write self-help books, right? I've published 9 of them at this point, but none of that. It's a supplement. It's an additive to help you understand and see something clearly, or even bring something to the forefront of your awareness.
Yeah.
And no matter how many activities I put in there, there's still such a limitation of being able to do that without the guidance of someone else that can see all of your stuff from the outside. I don't know if you do, but I'm a therapist and I have a therapist, and it's because they get to see all the things when I can tell you all the things I do and I've done, and the dysfunction and the names for the dysfunctions and how they show up. And then they'll be like, Habiba, so here's what else I've noticed. I'm just like, oh, damn it.
Didn't see that. Yeah, I thought I'd got them all down. Yeah, no, absolutely. You can't see yourself. But that's why it's so amazing. It's why we need each other. We need relationships. because they're going to reflect back at us in a way
Yes.
that we can't see ourselves, right?
It's just not possible.
No, it isn't. So I'm a big proponent of, reading. They say readers are leaders. And also having a therapist. You can't see yourself,
Right.
and that's when you can go and sit with someone, talk with someone, whatever, however you're going to do it, in a way that is you can't do when you're doing the work on your own.
Right.
So you got to make sure you pick the right person, right?
Absolutely.
Because you want to feel comfortable, you want to feel safe, you want to feel understood, you want to feel that they've got empathy for you, not sympathy, but
Right.
empathy. Yeah.
And then when they challenge you, because that's my therapist and that's the kind of therapy I do, that that will still be okay.
Yeah.
Right. You can work through it together. It's not a make or break moment.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think so much relational healing happens when you do have the right therapist, because these are things we didn't get to do in our childhoods. Right.
Yeah.
And that we now get to model and work through with the person in front of us.
Yeah.
So
What I love about one of the things that I do love about the book, just real quick, is it's a story. I'm just telling a story. This all happened. And I had no idea when I was writing the story that there were so many learning opportunities in there, right? So
Mhm.
in there. So what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah. So I had a belief, kind of like you, Habiba. I was like, I don't know how people who make fiction, who make stories, I couldn't think of all these. I couldn't make that up, right? I wouldn't even know where to begin. But what's interesting is that since I've written this book and I'm talking about it, and I'm in my meditation, and I've started to write a book, a fictitious book. And it's
Oh my goodness, amazing.
amazing. The book, I'm going to share it with you. Well, it's going to come out one day and I'll get you a copy, but it's amazing. The book is amazing. And of course, I've got a sense of humor, right? So I love to make things funny. So it's about a relationship. It's about a girl, right? It starts out, she's a young girl and she grows into a woman. She meets the man of her dreams and so on and so on. But the dynamic between them is hilarious, right? They get into all kinds of situations that are just so funny. Anyway, so I love that. And it's about, again, it's about acceptance. It's facing fear, going through trauma, going through tragedy that they go through an extreme when they're young. Anyway, so my point is, sometimes we don't know what we're capable of until we do it, right? So
Right.
if you've written all these self-help books, which is amazing, you can write a story if you want to. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah.
I do. It's just one of those, it's easier for me to write about what's happened rather than try to invent something else. I love getting lost in somebody else's writing and their worlds that they create. Reading is my favorite pastime. I do it all day, every day, if I can. And learning, right, is so important. But that is something that I will leave to. It's like comedy. I couldn't tell a joke right now to save my life. It's just not going to happen. And yet I have people that say, you're very funny. And it's just because of what I said in the moment that I was thinking, not even trying
to be funny per se. You're just telling something, but you have an ability to make it fun. You have the ability to say it in a way that someone can take it as a funny thing. I think the same thing. I'm not a joke teller. I don't really tell jokes, but I can make a situation funny,
Yeah.
And that also, what they say, and for me, it's true, that comedy comes from trauma.
100%. That's funny.
Yeah, right.
How else are you going to cope with the nonsense?
Exactly.
The enormity of it. Yeah.
And it's funny, the worst things are, the funnier you get, because you're just like, what the hell? How could,
Right.
The only thing I could do right now is laugh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate everything that you've given us. I'm very excited to see where you go.
Well, thank you.
And what's next?
I really appreciate you. Like I said, I was so excited about this when I first started talking. I was all over the place. I got so many things to say about this, So I really appreciate having me on. It was a wonderful experience. You're an amazing woman, mother, sister, whatever it is. And I really appreciate meeting you. It's been wonderful.